What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, back with another episode, man. And I hope y'all had a great weekend. If you didn't tune in Saturday, we had the live stream of our Sun Belt preview, man. So go back and check that out if you're interested in that. We also did our AAC preview last Wednesday. We have another live stream scheduled Wednesday for the ACC. And then Saturday, man, we're doing our SWAC preview, man, highlighting the top games to watch, top players to watch, the sleepers in the conference, and give our official predictions for the 2021 season, man. I'm so pumped for it, and it's going to be a great time, man. So make sure to subscribe, turn on your post notifications, man, for all things college football here. Only YouTube channel in the country, man, that covers every level of college football, so you can get all your college football content right here. But we're headed to the SWAC today. And I want to give this idea a shout out. Our guy Josh Pate from 247 Sports, who we had on the show, man. I'll link the interview in the bio. He did this topic for the entire ball, mostly Power Five, where he laid out circle games each week for college football, and these are the games that had the biggest impact on the college football playoff race, just all the storylines and everything like that. So I wanted to do one for the SWAC because no one out there is really talking about this. It's a very subjective thing, so I hope y'all are very interactive with this in terms of commenting below which games you might be looking forward to and which ones I might have overlooked. And so I want to lay out my criteria here real quick, my criterion. And it's not is I'm not just picking a game because it's a classic. I'm not picking just a game because of the rivalry or anything like that. So like one, being a classic helps. Two, it needs to impact the SWAC race, the SWAC championship race. Or three, it needs to impact SWAC perception. So if it's a non-conference game against an lower FBS level school that like you look like a Jackson State ULM game would be a perfect example of that's one Jackson State could win. That's one that could boost the resume of the SWAC as a whole. That would give that game a boost. And or if you play an upper level FCS team, so like if you play a team that might make a run at the FCS playoffs, that would be a huge boost as well. So I'm doing this just for the SWAC, man. So this is just SWAC teams. I went through week 1 through week 13 and pick the game that should be the circle game, in my personal opinion, each week. And so I want y'all to comment below what y'all think of my picks and what would be some of the things you would change and or that you agree with on this list. So, I'm gonna get week 1 out of the way because I feel like week 1 is the most obvious. Listen, anybody you ask who covers SWAC football, who covers college football, if they were doing this exact topic, would pick the same game. And as Jackson State, FAMU, week 1, September 5th in Miami Gardens, man, that game is already close to being sold out, if not sold out already last time I checked. You have FAMU's first game in the SWAC. You got Shadur Sanders making his first start. You have this Jackson State team that literally the entire country is enamored with, making their debut on ESPN2 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, man, where the whole country is going to be watching on a Sunday. I'm so pumped for this game. I think it's going. So the things we're going to figure out in this game is one, what does FAMU bring into the SWAC, and where are they at in terms of competing in the SWAC? Because there's a lot of preseason predictions, but you got to bring them over from the MEAC and see where they kind of fit. And I believe preseason they were ranked second in their division. So this is going to be interesting. This is going to be Jackson State's opening game to put everyone on notice. Jackson State fans are very, very confident in their team this year. A lot of experts are really high on what Deion Sanders has built over there in Jackson, Mississippi. So this is the chance to put it all on the line. You have a great, great matchup. You got Marquise Bell on the defense for FAMU versus Shadur and versus at great, large, I guess a large collection of wide receivers that Jackson State has put together this all season. The one thing I want to see is where's Jackson State's O-line? I know they recruited a lot. They upgraded a lot of those positions along the O-line, but that's one spot that I was very critical of them last year. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. I'm also just excited to see what FAMU does at quarterback. They're going to have a new signal caller there. I want to see how they perform on the biggest stage. So this game not only is the most hype game, arguably, of the season in the SWAC, but also we get a lot of questions answered week one down there in Miami Gardens. So this was an obvious pick. And so let's get to week two. And I have another. So I tried to be as variable as possible. I didn't want to just pick all Jackson State. I didn't want to just pick all Southern or Alcorn. So, but this one is another Jackson State game, and it's Jackson State versus Tennessee State. The reason this game got there is almost it's important, but it's almost by default. Alabama State goes and plays Auburn. Bethune is down at UCF. Baylor and Texas Southern play. Grambling's headed to Southern Miss, which was my probably second pick. FAMU plays Fort Valley, Miles and Southern. Prairie View plays UIW. So for me, this one kind of took it by default. It's in Memphis, Tennessee, 7 p.m. man, Saturday, September 11th. I'm really pumped here because one, this is a big game for Jackson State if they slip up. And I know our guy Scotty Allscript is saying that week one FAMU game is going to be tricky because this Jackson State team needs time to build a little bit of chemistry. It's to we'll see. But if let's just say if they take a loss week one, this game becomes even bigger. And on top of that, you have the two paths that these schools took by hiring previous player and some other coaches and fan bases have called it the celebrity coaching trend. You have that here with Eddie George. You have that here with Deion Sanders at Jackson State. And the matchup I'm excited to see is this very, very talented Jackson State defense. You have superstars all along that defense, and then you also get the creative mind of Hugh Jackson as the offensive coordinator for Tennessee State. How creative can he be? Can he make plays and force this defense into uncomfortable situations in this week two matchup? I'm very interested to see what Tennessee State is. I got a lot of questions for them. And just like we had a lot of questions when Deion stepped in his first season, and we have a lot of questions here too. I'm interested to see what the starting quarterback's going to be at Tennessee State. They brought in a lot of transfers, a lot of talent. They got the kid from Auburn. They got Higbottom, if I remember right. So they have a lot of talent at that QB spot, but who's going to come out and start there? They're going to be tested super, super early here at Jackson State with Nugget and this whole secondary that's full of stars with Shiloh at the safety spot as well. I'm interested in Jackson State, Tennessee State, and it's going to be another early test for Jackson State. And I think we're going to get a lot of information about what Jackson State has to offer early in the season with two back-to-back tough games. And this is a great, I guess, litmus test for what Hugh Jackson's offense is going to be in year one and what he could do with it if, he goes up against probably one of the most talented defenses they're going to see all season. And so week three, as we move that way, I picked another out of conference matchup here, and it was more that FCS one where it's Arkansas Pine-Bluff versus Central Arkansas. This is a very interesting game, and I want to give some honorable mentions real quick. We've talked about it on the podcast before about FCS teams upsetting Power 5 teams or FBS teams, and this is the week that I am so interested in. I could have went with FAMU South Florida because I'm not very high on South Florida. They're going to be they have a lot of holes on that team to say the least. So FAMU, it going into USF is going to be very interesting. I also thought about maybe Alcorn versus South Alabama. In Mobile, Alabama, they're probably on the lower end of the Sun Belt. And, our guy, Coach Simmons, go check out his channel as well, man. Shout out to Coach Simmons. He's been pushing this uh, Sun Belt SWAC almost invitational, like, kind of like college basketball where the two conferences merge and they all play each other. This is a good test to see where Alcorn is against one of the lower tiered Sun Belt teams in South Alabama who really just recently become a staple in FBS. And then you also have that interesting game, Jackson State, Louisiana Monroe. I mostly didn't pick it because I didn't want to have three straight Jackson State games. And Jackson State's on the list multiple more times. That's going to be an interesting game. I've already said I have Jackson State winning against Louisiana Monroe. I think they're the better team, and I really don't think Louisiana Monroe has much there. But I went with Arkansas Pine Bluff versus Central Arkansas because it's such an interesting matchup. You have Thigpen in the secondary with Arkansas Pine-Bluff. They lost some transfers, but brought in some very talented guys into that secondary. And you arguably face the best wide receiver in the FBS and Tyler Hudson at Central Arkansas. And Central Arkansas is a team that has made the playoffs almost every single year. They missed it by like a game or two last year, but they're probably going to be a favorite along with Jacksonville State in the new ASUN conference in the FCS. This is a huge test because if UAPB can pull off this win against Central Arkansas, it gives them a huge notch in their belt against one of the better teams in the FBS that is probably going to be in that playoffs. And what it's going to do is raise the SWAC's profile as a whole. And it's a big test for Skylar Perry against a pretty good defense. And also, a lot of people think UAPB was a one-hit wonder last year. So this is a great time to get a big momentum boost win and also kind of put your name on the map in terms of the FCS by showing that the SWAC isn't to be messed with, isn't to be overlooked in these matchups. And so that's why I picked Arkansas Pine Bluff versus Central Arkansas as my circle game. I'm definitely going to be watching this game. And if y'all are interested, we actually today dropped an interview with our guy Tyler Hudson over at Central Arkansas, the wide receiver. It was a great interview, man. I'll be rooting for him hard. So if y'all are interested in that, go check that out. But week 4, I never thought UAPB would be on here twice, but it definitely is, and it's because Alcorn is this Alcorn UAPB game on Thursday of this week, September 23rd. It's really an interesting matchup in terms of determining who's going to be the favorite in that division. Is Alcorn going to take its rightful place back as the leader over there, or is UAPB going to show everybody that they weren't to be messed with? That the West is theirs to compete for, and this is a very interesting test for Skylar Perry. That secondary versus Felix Harper is going to be a matchup I'm so excited for, and it's really going to come down to can UAPB stop the run games. I think what Alcorn's going to do is lean on the run early and then let Felix kind of do his thing and get into his rhythm because we've seen that once he gets into his rhythm, he's damn near unstoppable. And, some other games I thought about picking. I mean, you have Jackson State, Delta State, Grambling versus Prairie View is up there too. And then Southern Mississippi Valley could be an interesting upset watch game. But in terms of determining who's going to be the favorite for the SWAC, this Alcorn UAPB game is going to go a long way in that division to determine who's the favorite there. If Alcorn can just win this game and win it convincingly, automatically you're just like, okay, they're taking their rightful place back at the top of the SWAC. But if UAPB can pull the quote unquote upset, UAPB is going to be riding very high, especially if they get that win week 3 over Central Arkansas. So this Alcorn Arkansas Pine Bluff game is my pick here for week 4. And so I'm gonna speed it up a little bit here. Week 5 is was an easy pick for me. I think the Alabama State FAMU game is an obvious pick. Now, Prairie View UAPB on Thursday is going to be an interesting one. Alabama A&M Grambling could possibly be interesting, but no Jackson State this week, no Alcorn this week. Alabama State FAMU is going to be interesting due to the fact for me, my predictions, this is a little spoiler for Saturday. I think it's going to determine that pecking order right there behind Alabama A&M and Jackson State this year. Now, FAMU is coming into this conference. They expect to win. Their fans are very confident. We've heard a lot of their fans speak on their confidence. I like Alabama State as a sleeper this year in the SWAC. I think they brought in some really great transfers. I think Urza Gray is a great running back, and you've got Ryan Nettles there developing at quarterback. I think Alabama State could shock some people. This is really going to determine who's that third contender in this division, and I'm very interested to see how FAMU and Alabama State plays out week 5. And then week 6, listen, if you watch this podcast, you know which game week 6. Do I even have to explain why this is the game? It's Jackson State, Alabama A&M. This is the circle game of the week. UAPB Alabama State is going to be interesting. Grambling Alcorn is going to be interesting. Everything else, listen, I even picked the little circle banners for the show because there's circle game. Everybody should have this game circled as one of the most important games to determine who's going to represent that division. And in the SWAC, Jackson State really feels like that they let Alabama A&M slip away last year, and they feel like they're reloaded. They feel like Shadur is the best quarterback in this conference. They feel like Nugget in that secondary is ready to shut down Aquil Glass, and Alabama A&M is not going to be backing down either. They feel like they improved their defense through the transfer portal just as much. I've been in touch with an Alabama A&M player that said he has this game circled, and this is the one he is looking forward to. And Aquil's going to be looking to put on a show like he did last year. I think their running back situation looks much better, and it's really going to come down to me, the O line of Alabama A&M versus the D line of Jackson State. If Jackson State can get a kill, pressure, and especially pressure up the middle, it's a wrap. And it's going to be an interesting game. But this game, by far, especially if these two teams are undefeated coming into this week, you're talking about a game that is going to be one to watch, one to record, one to watch again, and hopefully our guy Scotty does even his film study on it, because that's how big this game is going to be. Week 6 is a no-brainer here. Jackson State, Alabama A&M, Week 6, man, that is the circle game of the week. Week 7, I got another one. FAMU versus Alabama A&M. Now, Alabama State, Jackson State was tough, and UAPB and Southern were really the honorable mentions. But the reason I picked this one is if Alabama A&M wins against Jackson State, this is really their last hurdle in terms of kind of clinching that division up. If they can beat Jackson State and beat FAMU, man, they're looking real nice to walk right to the SWAC championship. But if they lose to Jackson State, this game becomes even more important for Alabama A&M, because you cannot lose back-to-back games, and you cannot lose to both of these teams if you expect to realistically compete for this division. And FAMU, if they win week 1, this would be a huge clincher if they can pull off the big win at Alabama A&M. And also, it's really goes a long way in establishing themselves in the conference and getting a big win over the defending champion. So FAMU, Alabama A&M was my pick for Week 7. I get if you have an argument for Southern and UAPB, or Alabama State, Jackson State, because both of those games are also probably going to go a long way in determining the SWAC champion. Week 8, I feel like this one was almost like a default one. I got Prairie View versus Southern Week 8 as my circle game. The other games you could have picked from are FAMU, Mississippi Valley, which could be interesting depending on Mississippi Valley's record. You have UAPB, Arkansas. There's no reason to pick a SEC versus SWAC game. Bethune and Jackson State could be interesting, but I think Jackson State wins that one pretty convincingly. And Alcorn, Texas Southern, I feel like is probably a blowout. So Prairie View Southern is the pick here. It's an interesting divisional matchup. Southern should be the pretty convincing favorite, but it's really the only one that had any ties into determining who really takes the SWAC this year. And Southern could just pretty much, you know, clinch this division and just set a matchup for the next week, man, because that goes, let's just get right into week 9. This is an important one for Southern just to keep them in the race when Alcorn comes week 9. That's pretty much the only reason why it even got picked. Alcorn versus Southern week 9 was the easiest pick. I get it. You got Alabama A&M, Alabama State in the Classic, but for me, this one goes such a long way. I mean, this is pretty much, in my opinion, based on everything that's happening, this is going to determine who represents a division in the SWAC championship. And Alcorn come in here and really reclaim their conference. That, a lot of these players feel like the title was won without them even having a chance to defend it, because they had to sit out the 2020 season. Now, a lot of those guys are motivated to really go out there and prove that they would have won the title last year, and that this is their conference and their title to lose or to win. And Southern, on the other hand, and get their revenge for 2019 when they lose to Alcorn. A lot of people think they should have won that game. So this game, of course, is going to be my pick. Jackson State has Mississippi Valley State, which I think they probably win that game. And Grambling FAMU could be pretty interesting. But Alcorn Southern, in my opinion, is by far and away the most important game week 9. And as we get to the last few weeks, man, week 10, have FAMU Southern. And it's really kind of by default because I think Alcorn Bethune is probably a Alcorn win. Texas Southern Jackson State is probably a blowout. A&M Mississippi Valley isn't much, so it's really by default. And this is another important game for FAMU to prove that they can compete against the best and the best in the SWAC, and it's Southern making sure that they continue fighting for their divisions. They can't take a conference loss here. And so I think Southern FAMU takes week 10. And also, it's a huge game because you're looking at Southern. That's three straight games I've picked week, four almost. You got Prairie View A&M week 8, Alcorn versus Southern week 9, week 10 FAMU Southern, and week 11 Southern Jackson State. What a stretch for Southern. They are going to they are really going to have to prove that if Southern wins the SWAC, they are going to have to go to the gauntlet. That is four back-to-back tough games that they're going to win, and this one's big for Jackson State too. If Jackson State goes in here and smacks Southern, or even gets to win it all, that is going to do wonders for Deion Sanders' perception and showing that, man, listen, we told y'all that the spring was just a fluke and that we weren't really all the like we didn't have time to implement our systems. We didn't have our players eligible, everything like that. And everything he's been talking this all season is going to come true if Jackson State can pull off this Southern win. It's going to be a huge test. And this is where we're going to find out what people really have in the SWAC. And so Southern Jackson State, obvious pick. Week 11, there really wasn't even a close one, in my opinion. And week 12, it's the same thing, man. Alcorn, Jackson State. I'm so pumped for this game. And the interesting thing is we could have almost back-to-back matchups between Alcorn and Jackson State because I think there's a good possibility that Jackson State and Alcorn could win their divisions and we just have a rematch in the SWAC championship between these two teams. I'm so interested to see Felix Harper versus the secondary for Jackson State. I'm interested to see what Shadur is like in week 12. How does he evolve throughout the season? And I'm interested to see just what this Jackson State team looks like in week 12 versus their tough matchups week 1 against FAMU. How far does the team come in terms of development, chemistry, and just playing together? I'm so interested in this. And the Jackson State team that Alcorn gets week 12 could be a completely different team from week 1. I want to see how their offense evolves and changes and makes adjustments throughout the season and what they look like week 12 because it's going to go a long way in showing what the coaching is like for that team, which I know a lot of people have questions about. And so Alcorn Jackson State is going to answer. And so I picked FAMU Jackson State week 1. It's going to answer those top questions. This is just going to put a bow on the season for Jackson State. What are we getting in Jackson State in year 2? This is going to be a game to determine everything. And then week 13, you already know the pick. If you're a SWAC fan, you know what game comes week 13. This Southern Grambling State and New Orleans. It's the classic. It's the classic, and it's really the only game to pick. And so Southern Grambling State. Listen, I do think Southern will probably win this game, but due to it being the only game of importance this week, we got to put it here. And I think this game will probably be picked even if there were some other important games. And that is my circle games for the SWAC season of 2020. I just wanted to do this topic to see kind of where y'all's heads were on what were the most important games of each week. And I know there's a lot of people doing that topic for Power 5 football, so I wanted to bring it to y'all in a SWAT form and talk about the most important games of the season each week and why I was kind of thinking that way. So comment below what y'all think is the most important game each week. What do y'all think of some of my picks? And just comment below your thoughts on the season, man. And make sure to subscribe. Turn on your post notifications for when we go live Saturday. We're doing a full SWAT preview, breaking down the top games, the top players to watch, the top storylines, and making our official predictions. They'll be live. Y'all can submit y'all's questions, submit y'all's predictions, and we'll break them down live right here, man. We'll be live for as long as y'all want to go, man. So make sure to subscribe, turn on our post notifications, and check out our interview with Tyler Hudson for Central Arkansas today. And tomorrow, we got DeJuan Cooper from South Dakota, linebacker, joining us. And Wednesday, We got our guy Ken Howard out of NC in North Carolina A&T, the linebacker, All-American, voted preseason MEAC defensive player of the year before last season, before North Carolina A&T opted out of the season. We talk about their move to the Big Sky and everything like that. So we got 3 big interviews on the docket for this week. And guys, B-Dub will be back with me tomorrow, so make sure to check out the 2-minute drill Monday through Friday. But hope y'all had a great weekend. But for myself and the Blue Bloods men, be back tomorrow.